What's up, wrestling maniacs? Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, you just walked into the most insane breakdown of what might be the single most explosive meltdown in WWE history. Today, we're talking about something that literally had me rewinding footage over and over because I couldn't believe what I was seeing: Paul Heyman's complete and utter psychological breakdown when he discovered that his two biggest weapons might be turning against him. Before we dive into this absolute chaos, and trust me, this is some next-level puppet master getting his strings cut type of drama, I need you to do me a solid. If this video gets your heart racing the same way mine is still pounding from watching this unfold, smash that like button like Paul Heyman smashing his fist on that table in pure panic. Hit that subscribe button because we're covering every single twist in this psychological warfare. And absolutely demolish that notification bell because what I'm about to break down is just the tip of the iceberg in what could be the most explosive power shift in WWE history. So here's what we're covering today, and buckle up because this is going to be wilder than a Brock Lesnar Suplex City tour through a house of mirrors. We're breaking down Paul Heyman's absolute meltdown when he found out that Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar had a backstage moment that basically shattered his entire worldview. We're analyzing why this has the so-called Wiseman running scared like he's being chased by both monsters at the same time. And we're diving deep into what this potential alliance could mean for the future of WWE. Plus, I'm throwing in my predictions for how this psychological chess match is going to play out, because honestly, after watching Heyman's reaction, I think we're about to see the most epic revenge story in wrestling history. Wrestling wildcards: what happens when the grand manipulator who has built his entire empire on deception, control, and playing people against each other like pieces on a chessboard finally realizes that the two most dangerous beasts he ever molded have not only escaped his grip, but may now be uniting to turn all of that destruction back on him like some kind of monster movie where Frankenstein's creations decide to hunt down their creator? Paul Heyman, the self-proclaimed Wiseman himself, the guy who thinks he's 10 steps ahead of everyone else in the room, has just been blindsided by the revelation that Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar shared an emotional and shockingly genuine backstage moment with Roman Reigns. And let me tell you, the panic that consumed him in the aftermath will go down as one of the most dramatic collapses in wrestling history. I'm talking full-on mental breakdown territory here. This isn't some carefully scripted storyline twist where everything gets wrapped up with a nice little bow at the end. This is an implosion of epic proportions, the kind of psychological earthquake that happens when someone who thinks they're untouchable suddenly realizes they've been playing with fire for so long that they're about to get burned worse than a marshmallow left too long over a campfire. The very foundation of Heyman's carefully calculated empire is shaking apart like a house of cards in a hurricane as two of his most monstrous creations come together in ways he never planned for and certainly never wanted. It's like watching a puppet master realize that his puppets have not only cut their own strings, but are now marching toward him with scissors. For decades, Heyman's entire strategy has been built on one simple principle: divide and conquer. Keep Roman and Brock at each other's throats. Make sure they never trust each other. Use their rivalry as his greatest weapon to maintain power and control. But what happens when that very strategy backfires so spectacularly that it creates the exact opposite of what he intended? Brock Lesnar's unexpected gesture of solidarity with Roman Reigns had already sent shockwaves through the WWE universe because, let's be honest, for years, these men were built to hate one another with the intensity of 1,000 burning suns. Their careers have been defined by violent clashes that left arenas looking like war zones, and their rivalry was carefully fueled by Heyman's manipulations like gasoline on a fire. But when Paul Heyman was informed about their private backstage meeting, and apparently someone had hidden cameras rolling because WWE loves their backstage drama, the Wiseman's legendary calm cracked in an instant like a dam bursting under pressure. The footage shows one of his nervous underlings approaching him like they're about to deliver news of a death in the family, whispering the information in his ear, and within milliseconds, his trademark smirk, that cocky "I know something you don't know" expression he always wears, drained from his face like water leaving a broken glass, replaced by what can only be described as sheer, unadulterated dread. He pounded his fist on that table with such force that I'm surprised he didn't break his hand, roaring with a voice that betrayed his fear more than his fury. "They're not supposed to talk. They're supposed to hate each other." And in that moment, you could literally see the mask slip away to reveal a man who was absolutely terrified of losing control. But what came next was even more unsettling, because thinking no one could hear him, Heyman muttered words that revealed his darkest fear. "I created two monsters, and now they're coming for me." With those words, the supposedly invincible Wiseman suddenly looked mortal for the first time in decades. A man who had spent his entire career pulling strings from the shadows, now realizing that the puppets had cut themselves loose and are marching toward him with vengeance burning in their eyes. And what followed this revelation was frantic, desperate, and utterly uncharacteristic of the Paul Heyman we all know. This is a guy who usually operates with the cool calculation of a chess grandmaster, but suddenly he was scrambling like an amateur player who just realized he's been checkmated. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, his voice trembling with unmasked desperation as he called Seth Rollins, and you could hear him literally begging for backup, pleading for time, his tone sounding less like a manipulator in control and more like a man trapped in a corner with nowhere to run. Backstage sources have revealed that since that moment, Heyman has become completely erratic, and I mean completely unhinged. He's demanding extra security like he's expecting an assassination attempt, pacing locker room corridors in paranoia like a caged animal, and desperately trying to sow discord within his new faction before those cracks grow into full-scale earthquakes that bring down his entire empire. But here's the beautiful irony of the whole situation. While Heyman is scrambling around like a chicken with his head cut off, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar are reportedly watching all of this unfold with pure amusement. They're treating his panic as proof that their quiet psychological warfare is already working better than any physical beatdown ever could. And if Heyman's visible paranoia wasn't enough of a sign that he's losing his grip on reality, sources say that Roman and Brock's laughter behind the curtain is confirmation that they've already gotten so deep into his head that he can't think straight anymore. It's like watching someone realize they've been playing checkers while their opponents have been playing 4D chess. For decades, Heyman's genius has been his ability to divide and conquer, to manipulate situations so that his enemies would destroy each other while he sat back and watched the chaos unfold. He made sure that Roman and Lesnar never trusted one another, turning their natural rivalry into his greatest weapons for maintaining power and control. But now, that very strategy has completely flipped on him like a boomerang coming back to smack him in the face. The potential of a Reigns-Lesnar union is not only a problem for Heyman, it's the nightmare scenario he never prepared for, the one possibility that could unravel everything he's worked for over the past 2 decades. Think about it from his perspective. He spent years positioning himself as the puppet master, the guy who controls both of these monsters by keeping them focused on destroying each other instead of looking at who's really been pulling the strings. But what happens when those monsters realize they have a common enemy? What happens when they figure out that the real villain in their story isn't each other, but the man who's been manipulating them from the shadows? The stakes couldn't be higher for Heyman, because if he cannot regain control of this situation, everything he's built over the past several decades crumbles into dust. His legacy as the ultimate manipulator collapses, his empire of influence falls apart, and the two monsters he once unleashed on the wrestling world may finally turn their combined wrath back on their creator in the most brutal way possible. And here's what makes this even more terrifying for Heyman. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar aren't just any two wrestlers who might team up against him. These are two of the most dominant, most destructive forces in WWE history. Guys who have steamrolled through entire rosters when they're motivated. Imagine what they could do if they're working together with the common goal of making Paul Heyman's life a living nightmare. The psychological aspect of this is absolutely brilliant because they don't even have to physically attack Heyman to destroy him. They just have to let him know that they're talking, that they're comparing notes, that they're figuring out exactly how he's been playing them against each other all these years. The fear of what they might be planning is eating him alive from the inside. You can see it in every panicked phone call he makes, every paranoid glance over his shoulder, every desperate attempt to maintain control of a situation that's already spiraled completely out of his hands. This is a man who built his reputation on being 3 steps ahead of everyone else, and now he's scrambling just to keep up with what's happening right in front of him. The question that's consuming fans and wrestling insiders alike is both simple and seismic. Will Paul Heyman somehow pull another trick from his seemingly endless bag of schemes and manipulation tactics, or has he finally reached the end of his rope, destined to fall victim to the very chaos he spent decades engineering and perfecting? Because here's the thing about Paul Heyman. He survived and thrived in this business for longer than most people have been watching wrestling by always having a backup plan, always having another angle to work, always being able to turn a disadvantage into an advantage through pure cunning and manipulation. But this time feels different. This time, he's not just dealing with one opponent he can outthink or outmaneuver. He's potentially facing two of the most dangerous competitors in WWE history who have every reason to want revenge against him for years of manipulation and control. This isn't a chess match anymore. This is a war, and Heyman might finally be outgunned. The beautiful thing about watching this unfold is seeing how the master manipulator reacts when he's the one being manipulated for once. All those years of playing psychological games with other people, and now he's getting a taste of his own medicine delivered by two guys who learned from the master themselves. Roman and Brock don't have to make grand announcements or cut elaborate promos about their alliance. They just have to let Heyman's own paranoia and fear do the work for them. Every friendly conversation they have backstage becomes a potential conspiracy in Heyman's mind. Every shared laugh becomes evidence that they're plotting against him. It's psychological torture of the highest order. And the most delicious irony is that Heyman created this situation himself through his own manipulative tactics. If he had treated Roman and Brock as genuine allies instead of pawns to be